The great hall fell silent as Ambassador Zethkar walked to the center stage. His tall, blue-skinned form moved with the grace that came from living for over 800 years. The Galactic Council had seen many emergency meetings, but this one felt different. The air itself seemed heavy with worry. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy watched from their seats. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few looked like walking crystals. But all of them had the same look in their eyes, fear mixed with curiosity. They all knew why they were here. Humans had joined the galactic community just 6 months ago. Their small, pink-skinned forms seemed so weak compared to the mighty warrior races. Their ships looked old and clunky next to the sleek vessels of advanced civilizations. Most species had laughed when Earth applied for membership, but the elder races did not laugh. They remembered. Zethkar's voice echoed through the hall without any microphone. His people had perfected sound control long before most species had discovered fire. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," he began, "we gather today to discuss the newest members of our community, the humans of Earth." A few young counselors shifted in their seats. Some rolled their eyes. The Nexari delegation whispered among themselves, their insect-like clicking filling a small corner of the hall. They had not been around during the last incident. They did not understand. "There is one rule," Zethkar continued, his ancient eyes scanning the crowd. "One rule that has kept peace in our galaxy for 3 centuries. One rule that every species must follow if they wish to survive." The hall grew even quieter. Even the Nexari stopped their clicking. Never interfere with Earth's fleet. Never attack. Their ships. Never threaten their people when they travel among the stars. Counselor Vythe of the Zalani Confederacy stood up. She was young by galactic standards, only 200 years old. Her silver skin gleamed under the lights as she spoke. "Honored Ambassador, with respect, this seems like fear-mongering. Humans are primitive. Their ships are barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Their weapons are simple projectiles and basic energy beams. What possible threat could they pose to advanced civilizations?" Murmurs of agreement came from several delegations. The younger species nodded their heads. The Dreth Empire's representative, a massive bear-like creature, grunted his approval. His people had conquered 12 star systems in the last century, alone. Zethkar's expression did not change. He had expected this reaction. The young always thought they knew better. "Counselor Vythe, how old is your civilization?" "We achieved spaceflight 800 years ago," Vythe replied proudly. "We have mastered quantum mechanics and dimensional folding. Our battle fleets can destroy planets." "And yet you know nothing of the hegemony of Kralth." The name hung in the air like a curse. The older representatives shifted uncomfortably. Species that had lived through that time period looked down at their hands or closed their eyes. "The Kralth hegemony controlled 47 star systems," Zethkar explained, his voice taking on the tone of someone telling a ghost story. "They had been spacefaring for over 1,000 years. Their technology was among the most advanced in the galaxy. They could build ships the size of moons. They could crack planets in half with their weapons." He paused, letting the words sink in. 312 years ago, a human exploration fleet entered what the Kralth considered their territory. It was a small fleet, just 5 ships carrying scientists and diplomats. The humans claimed they were on a peaceful mission to study a rare stellar phenomenon. Vythe crossed her arms. "And the Kralth destroyed them?" "No," Zethkar said softly. "They captured them. The Kralth wanted to study human technology and biology. They thought humans might make useful slaves or research subjects. The 5 ships simply vanished one day. No distress signals, no wreckage, just gone. The Dreth representative leaned forward. His people respected strength above all else. What happened next? Nothing, Zethkar replied. For 2 months, absolutely nothing happened. No angry messages from Earth, no diplomatic protests, no military mobilization that our sensors could detect. Human merchant ships continued to trade peacefully with other species. Human diplomats attended council meetings and social gatherings as if nothing had occurred. That sounds like weakness, rumbled the Dreth. That is what the Krauth thought as well. Zethkar's voice grew even quieter, forcing everyone to strain to hear him. They began making demands. They claimed ownership of 3 star systems that had been neutral territory. They demanded tribute from weaker species. They grew bold. The ambassador walked closer to the center of the hall. His footsteps echoed loudly in the silence. On the 73rd day after the human ships vanished, every Krauth installation in their home system simply stopped responding to communications. Their capital world, their orbital stations, their defensive platforms, all went silent at exactly the same moment. Several counselors leaned forward in their seats. Investigation teams from neutral species went to check on them. They found the Krauth home system exactly as it had always been, planets in their proper orbits, stations floating where they should be, but empty, completely empty. Empty, Vyth asked. Every single Krauth was gone. Not dead, gone. No bodies? No signs of struggle? No weapon signatures? No radiation? Their ships were still there, powered and functional, but with no crews. Their cities were intact but abandoned. Food was still warm on tables. Personal belongings remained, undisturbed. The hall was so quiet that the sound of breathing seemed loud. The investigation teams expanded their search. 47 star systems, billions of Krauth, all gone in a single moment across hundreds of light years of space. Their entire species had simply vanished. Zethkar stopped walking and faced the assembly. 3 days later, the 5 missing human ships reappeared at the edge of Krauth space. They were completely undamaged. The crews were alive and healthy. When asked about their experience, the human captain filed a simple report stating that they had been temporarily detained due to a misunderstanding and that the situation had been resolved peacefully. The silence stretched on for long minutes. Finally, a small, furry delegate from the Pixen Collective raised a trembling paw. What happened to the Krauth? Nobody knows, Zethkar answered. The humans never explained. They never made threats. They never boasted about their victory. When asked directly, they simply said that the Krauth had chosen to relocate, and that they wished them well in their new home. Vith stood again, but her voice was less confident now. Surely there were other incidents, other tests of human capabilities? There were attempts, Zethkar nodded grimly. The Sectar Dominion tried to tax human merchant vessels passing through their space. One day, all Sectar tax collection ships simultaneously developed engine failures that stranded them in empty space for 3 weeks. During that time, every Sectar official involved in the taxation policy resigned their positions and publicly apologized to humanity. He continued. The Mort Collective attempted to scan human vessels for technology they could steal. Their scanning equipment exploded, not violently, it simply fell apart into component atoms. New equipment was provided the next day with a note stating that accidents happen and suggesting more careful handling in the future. The message became clear, Zethkar concluded. Humans are not like other species. Their true capabilities are hidden behind a facade of primitive technology and peaceful intentions. They do not conquer or dominate like warrior races. They do not negotiate or bargain like merchant civilizations. They simply exist, and those who threaten them cease to exist. Counselor Vith sat down heavily. The confident expression had vanished from her face. "This is why we have one rule," Zethkar said, his voice carrying across the vast hall. "One simple rule that has kept peace in our galaxy for 3 centuries. Do not tamper with Earth's fleet. Do not threaten human ships or crews. Do not test their patience." He looked directly at each delegation as he spoke his final words. "Because if you break this rule, you will discover that humans are not the primitive species they appear to be. And that discovery will be the last thing your civilization ever makes." The emergency session of the Galactic Council ended in complete silence. As delegates filed out of the hall, most were already planning to update their military protocols and diplomatic guidelines, but not all of them were listening. In the Zalani section, Counselor Vythe sat staring at the empty stage. Her silver skin had grown pale during the ambassador's speech, but as the hall emptied, color returned to her features along with something else: determination. She had not lived for 2 centuries and built a powerful confederation by backing down from challenges. The elder races might cower before human legends and ancient stories, but Vythe believed in what she could see and measure. Humans were weak. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were primitive. The Krauth had probably been destroyed by some other species who blamed humans to avoid responsibility. Or perhaps they had fled to another galaxy to escape their enemies. The simplest explanations were usually correct. As Vythe left the council hall, she was already planning. The Zalani Confederacy was young and strong. Their battle fleets were among the most advanced in the galaxy. If humans really were as powerful as the old stories claimed, they would not hide behind primitive technology and peaceful gestures. She would test this so-called rule. She would show the galaxy that humans were just another weak species hiding behind the protection of ancient superstitions. What could possibly go wrong? Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the research vessel Perseverance, watching the stars drift slowly past the view screen. At 35 years old, she had spent most of her adult life among the stars, but the beauty of space still took her breath away. The Kepler 442 system stretched out before them, with its unusual binary stars creating light patterns that danced across nearby nebulae. "Captain," called Dr. Martinez from his science station. "We're getting some interesting readings from the exotic matter concentrations near the 4th planet. This could be exactly what we've been looking for." Sarah nodded with a smile. The Perseverance carried 127 of Earth's best researchers, scientists, and support crew. They had been traveling for 6 months, studying rare stellar phenomena that could help humanity better understand the universe. It was peaceful work, the kind that made her glad she had chosen scientific service over military duty. "Take us into a stable orbit around the 4th planet," she ordered her navigation officer. "Begin setting up the sensor arrays. Dr. Martinez, how long will you need for a complete scan?" "At least 3 days for a preliminary study," the elderly scientist replied, adjusting his thick glasses. "The exotic matter here is unlike anything we've seen before. It seems to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Sarah was about to respond when her communications officer, Lieutenant Park, looked up from his station with a frown. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission on official Galactic Council frequencies. It's marked as urgent. Put it through. The view screen flickered and changed to show a silver-skinned female alien in an elaborate military uniform. Sarah recognized the species immediately, Zilani. She had met a few of their diplomats during Earth's integration into the galactic community. They seemed pleasant enough, if a bit arrogant about their technology. "Human vessel," the alien said in accented but clear English. "I am Admiral Kextall of the Zilani Confederacy Battle Fleet. You are currently in violation of our territorial boundaries. State your business immediately." Sarah checked her navigation charts quickly. According to all official galactic maps, this system was in neutral space, open to peaceful exploration by any member species. "Admiral Kextall, this is Captain Sarah, Chen of the Earth research vessel, Perseverance. According to our charts, this system is neutral territory. We are conducting peaceful scientific research under Galactic Council regulations." The Admiral's expression grew cold. "Your charts are outdated, human. The Zilani Confederacy has expanded our territorial claims to include this entire sector. All vessels must now request permission before entering our space." Dr. Martinez walked over to Sarah's chair and whispered quietly, "Captain, our latest galactic charts were updated just 2 weeks ago. There's been no official notice of territorial expansion." Sarah nodded slightly and addressed the screen again. "Admiral, we have not received any official notification of territorial changes through proper Galactic Council channels. Our charts show this as neutral space. We're happy to file a formal request for research permission if you provide us with the proper documentation." Admiral Kextall's eyes flashed with anger. "Documentation? You dare question the authority of the Zilani Confederacy? Your primitive species has been in space for barely a century. We have been masters of these stars for 800 years. Behind the Admiral, Sarah could see other Zilani officers moving around what appeared to be a large military bridge. Warning lights were flashing, and she could hear the sound of weapons. Systems charging. This was escalating quickly. "Admiral, we mean no disrespect," Sarah said calmly. "We're scientists, not soldiers. If there's been a territorial change, we're happy to leave once we receive proper authorization. But we need to follow Galactic Council protocols." "Protocols?" Kextall laughed harshly. "Let me explain our protocols, human. You will surrender your vessel immediately. Your crew will submit to processing as trespassers. Your ship will be confiscated as payment for violating our territory." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She had served in Earth's Merchant Marine for 10 years before joining the Research Division. She knew when someone was looking for a fight. "Admiral, that's completely against Galactic Council law. We are a peaceful research vessel with no military capabilities. Under Council regulations, the Council protects those who respect territorial boundaries," Kextall interrupted. "You have chosen to ignore our legitimate claims. Therefore, you have chosen to face the consequences." The communication cut off abruptly. Sarah immediately turned to her sensor operator. "Johnson, full scan. I want to know what we're dealing with. Captain, I'm reading 15 Zilani warships closing on our position. They're big ones, battlecruiser class, heavy weapons, military shields, the works." Johnson's voice was steady, but Sarah could hear the concern underneath. Dr. Martinez looked worried. "Captain, the Perseverance isn't a military vessel. We have basic defensive shields and some point defense systems, but nothing that could handle a single battle cruiser, let alone 15. Sarah nodded grimly. She had hoped to avoid this kind of situation entirely. The Perseverance was designed for exploration and research, not combat. Her crew were scientists and support staff, not soldiers. Communications. Get me a direct line to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Working on it, Captain, but we're pretty far out. It'll take at least 6 hours for a message to reach Earth, and another 6 for a response. Do it anyway. Send a full report of the situation and request immediate diplomatic assistance. Sarah paused, thinking quickly. Also, send a copy to the nearest Galactic Council enforcement station. Aye, Captain. The next few minutes passed in tense silence as the Zalani fleet closed in around them. Sarah watched on the tactical display as the enemy ships formed a perfect sphere around the Perseverance. There was no way to run, and no way to fight. Captain, Lieutenant Park called out. Admiral Quetzalcoatl is hailing us again. On screen. The Admiral's face appeared, but this time she was smiling. It was not a pleasant smile. Human Captain, as you can see, resistance is futile. Our ships have you completely surrounded. You have one final chance to surrender peacefully. Admiral, I'm formally protesting this action under Galactic Council authority. We are a peaceful research vessel in neutral space. This is an act of piracy. Piracy? Quetzalcoatl's smile grew wider. No, human. This is conquest. Your species has enjoyed the protection of old superstitions for too long. The galaxy needs to learn that humans are just another weak race hiding behind empty threats. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What superstitions? Oh, you don't know. The Admiral seemed delighted. Your people have somehow convinced the older species that you're dangerous. Something about never interfering with Earth's fleet. Ancient warnings about mysterious disappearances. Ridiculous stories meant to frighten children. Sarah's blood ran cold. She had heard whispers about the one rule during diplomatic briefings, but Earth Command had never explained the details. Now she was beginning to understand why. Admiral, she said carefully, perhaps we should contact the Galactic Council before... Before what? Quetzalcoatl interrupted. Before you show your true weakness? Before the galaxy learns that humans are no different from any other primitive species? I think not. The Admiral turned to someone off-screen and spoke in the clicking Zalani language. Sarah's translation computer picked up fragments. Boarding pods, seized the ship, prepared detention facilities. Admiral Quetzalcoatl, Sarah said loudly, trying to regain the alien's attention. I'm officially requesting diplomatic immunity under Galactic Council regulations. My crew and I are non-combatants engaged in peaceful research. Your requests are denied, Quetzalcoatl replied coldly. You are now prisoners of the Zalani Confederacy. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These were good people, scientists, engineers, medical staff, support personnel. They had signed up to explore the wonders of the universe, not to become prisoners of an aggressive alien empire. Dr. Martinez walked over to her chair again. Captain, what are our options? Sarah thought for a moment. The Perseverance did have some defensive capabilities, but nothing that could seriously threaten 15 battlecruisers. They could try to run, but the Zalani ships were faster and already in perfect position to intercept any escape attempt. Johnson, she called to her sensor operator. Are you still tracking those weapon signatures from the exotic matter concentrations? Yes, Captain. The readings are getting stronger. Whatever's down there, it's putting out massive amounts of energy in frequencies I've never seen before. Sarah made her decision. All stations, prepare for emergency maneuvers. Engineering, I need maximum power to the engines and shields. Captain, Lieutenant Park interrupted. The Zilani are launching boarding pods. On the tactical display, Sarah could see dozens of small craft detaching from the enemy battlecruisers and heading toward the Perseverance. Each pod probably carried a squad of armed Zilani soldiers. 15 minutes at current speed. Sarah walked to her communications station and activated the ship's internal address system. All hands, this is the captain. We are about to be boarded by hostile forces. This is not a drill. All non-essential personnel report to emergency shelters immediately. Security teams to defensive positions. She turned back to her crew. I want everyone to remember. We are scientists, not soldiers. Do not resist violently. Follow their orders and stay alive. This situation will be resolved, but only if we survive it. Dr. Martinez looked confused. Captain, how can you be so sure? Earth is months away, and we're completely outnumbered. Sarah almost smiled, remembering fragments of conversations she had overheard during her officer training. Stories that were never officially confirmed, but which every Earth captain seemed to know. Doctor, there's something you need to understand about Earth's place in the galaxy. We're not as defenseless as we appear. What do you mean? Before Sarah could answer, the ship shuddered as the first boarding pods attached to their hull. Cutting tools began burning through the outer airlocks. Communications, Sarah ordered. Send one final message to Earth Command. Code classification. Package lost. Include our exact coordinates and the identity of all hostile vessels. Captain, that's a very specific code, Lieutenant Park said nervously. Are you sure? Send it now, Sarah commanded firmly, and make sure the timestamp is accurate down to the second. As armed Zilani soldiers began pouring through the breached airlocks, Sarah sat calmly in her captain's chair. Her crew looked terrified, but she felt strangely peaceful. The Admiral had made a terrible mistake. She had chosen to test an old rule that existed for very good reasons. And now, somewhere in Earth's command structure, people who understood the true nature of that rule were already taking action. Sarah just hoped she and her crew would live long enough to see the consequences. The first Zilani soldier to reach the bridge pointed a weapon at her head and spoke in broken English. You surrender now. No resistance. Sarah raised her hands, slowly, and looked directly into the alien's compound eyes. Message sent, she said quietly. Package lost. Address confirmed. The soldier looked confused by her words, but Admiral Kextal's laughter echoed through the ship's communication system. She had heard everything. Pathetic human threats, the Admiral's voice boomed. Did you really think your primitive planet could challenge the Zilani Confederacy? We control 40 star systems and command the most advanced fleet in this sector. Sarah said nothing. She simply sat in her chair and waited. The countdown had begun. 3 weeks passed. In the great council chambers of the Galactic Federation, Ambassador Zeth Carr sat in his private office, staring at reports that made his ancient blood run cold. The young species were celebrating. The Zilani Confederacy had thrown a massive victory parade. Admiral Kextal had been promoted and given a medal for expanding Confederacy influence. But the elder races knew better. They were quietly moving their assets, pulling back trade routes, and canceling diplomatic visits. The Vorthons had recalled all their ambassadors from Zilani space without explanation. The eternal archive of the preservers had gone completely, silent, sealing their borders for the first time in 1,000 years. Something was coming. Zethkar's assistant, a nervous young Makari named Click Whistle, scurried into the office carrying a data pad. His insect-like features were twitching with anxiety. "Honored Ambassador, the latest reports from our monitoring stations." "What do they show?" Zethkar asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Nothing, sir. Absolutely nothing. Human space appears completely normal. No military mobilization, no diplomatic protests, no changes to their patrol patterns or fleet positions. Their merchant vessels continue to trade peacefully with all species except—" Click Whistle paused. "Except? Except they've stopped all trade with Zilani space. Not officially. There are no public announcements or policy changes. Human merchants simply stopped filing flight plans to Confederacy systems. When asked, they cite scheduling conflicts and route optimization." Zethkar nodded grimly. He had seen this pattern before, 3 centuries ago. The quiet withdrawal, the careful repositioning, the calm before the storm that would reshape the galaxy. What about their diplomatic communications? Standard responses to all official inquiries. They acknowledge the unfortunate incident and state that they are reviewing their options through proper channels. Nothing more. And their missing research vessel? Click Whistle checked his data pad. The Perseverance remains in Zilani custody. According to intercepted communications, Admiral Kextal is personally overseeing the interrogation of the human crew. She claims they are learning valuable intelligence about human technology and defensive capabilities. Zethkar closed his eyes. The young admiral had no idea what she had unleashed. The humans weren't hiding their technology from enemies. They were hiding it from their friends. The galaxy wasn't ready to learn what Earth was truly capable of. Any unusual activity in human space at all? Well, Click Whistle hesitated. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected some anomalies, but they don't make sense. Explain. Human vessels have been appearing in locations where they shouldn't be able to reach. Last week, a human cargo ship was detected in the spiral, Nebula, which is 18 months away from the nearest human settlement at maximum faster-than-light speed. But their ship registries show it left Earth only 3 days before detection. Zethkar's eyes snapped open. What else? Similar reports from across the galaxy. Human ships appearing in impossible locations, always peaceful merchant vessels or scientific expeditions, always with proper documentation and trade permits. But the travel times don't match any known technology. The ambassador stood up and walked to his window, which showed a view of the council chambers below. Delegates from hundreds of species were going about their daily business, unaware that their universe was about to change forever. Click Whistle. Send a message to all member species with a history longer than 500 years. Tell them to prepare for irregularities in space-time near human vessels. Nothing more specific. Sir, shouldn't we warn the younger species? The Zilani Confederacy doesn't understand what they've done. Zethkar turned back to his assistant. The young never listen to warnings. They have to learn through experience. We can only hope some of them survive the lesson. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place in secret. The elder races communicated through channels that had existed since before most current species had discovered fire. Ancient agreements were being honored. Old debts were being called in. The hierarchs of Tau Ceti, who remembered the first contact with humanity, sent coded warnings to their descendants scattered across a dozen systems. The sleepers are stirring. Take shelter. The infinite minds of the consciousness collective, beings of pure thought who existed in quantum computers the size of moons, calculated probability matrices for the next few months. Every calculation ended the same way. Zilani Confederacy, 0.00% survival probability under current trajectory. The Watchers at the Edge, ancient machine intelligences that had observed the galaxy for millions of years, made their first communication in 10,000 years. Pattern recognized. Recommend immediate withdrawal from affected sectors. But the HFY's young species saw none of this hidden activity. They saw only what appeared to be random trade fluctuations and diplomatic scheduling changes. The Zalani, drunk on their apparent victory over the mysterious humans, began planning further expansions. In the detention center on Kextal's flagship, Captain Sarah Chen sat in a metal chair while Zalani interrogators tried to break her will. They had been at it for 3 weeks, using every technique in their psychological warfare manual. Truth serums had no effect. Her biology seemed resistant to their chemical compounds. Pain compliance methods failed because she simply endured them without breaking. Most frustrating for her captors, she seemed completely unconcerned about her situation. "Captain Chen," said Chief Interrogator Vrextal, a thin Zalani with cruel eyes. "Your ship has been thoroughly searched. Your crew has been questioned extensively. We know everything about your primitive technology." Sarah looked at him calmly. "Do you?" "Your engines are laughably inefficient. Your weapons are barely sufficient to fight off pirates. Your shields couldn't stop a civilian transport, let alone a military vessel. How does such a weak species inspire fear in the galaxy?" "I wouldn't know," Sarah replied honestly. "I'm just a research captain. I study stellar phenomena and write scientific reports." Vrextal slammed his hand on the table. "Lies. The elder races speak of humans with terror. They claim your species has capabilities beyond imagination. But we have examined your ship down to the atomic level. There is nothing special about your technology." Sarah almost smiled. The Perseverance was indeed exactly what it appeared to be: a simple research vessel with basic capabilities. The Zalani had found nothing unusual because there was nothing unusual to find. Not on that ship. "Perhaps the elder races are just more cautious than your people," she suggested. "Cautious?" Vrextal laughed harshly. "They are cowards, afraid of shadows and ancient stories. The Vorthans claim that humans destroyed the Kralth hegemony, but we found no evidence of human involvement in their disappearance. Most likely, the Kralth fled to another galaxy to escape their debts." Sarah said nothing. She had learned during her interrogation that the Zalani had no access to the classified archives that contained the real records of the Kralth incident. Their intelligence services were impressive, but they were not ancient enough to have been present during the events that shaped the galaxy's current political structure. "Your silence proves nothing," Vrextal continued. "In 3 days, Admiral, Kextal will present you and your crew to the Confederacy Council as proof that humans are just another weak species hiding behind empty legends. Your capture will mark the beginning of a new age of Zalani dominance." "If you say so," Sarah replied quietly. Vrextal looked frustrated. 3 weeks of interrogation had produced nothing useful. The human captain answered questions honestly when they concerned basic scientific facts, but revealed nothing about military capabilities or defensive strategies. She seemed genuinely unaware of any special human technologies or hidden fleets. Either she was an extraordinary actress, or humans really were as primitive as they appeared. The interrogator left the detention cell, sealing the door behind him. Sarah was alone again, which was fine with her. She had a lot to think about. During her officer training on Earth, there had been classified briefings that she was now beginning to understand. Instructors had spoken carefully about contingency, protocols, and response escalation procedures. At the time, she had assumed they were talking about standard military doctrine, Now she realized they had been preparing her for this exact situation. The message she had sent, "Package lost, address confirmed," was not a call for help. It was not a request for rescue or diplomatic intervention. It was something much more specific and much more final. It was a target designation. Sarah had no idea what would happen next, but she knew it would happen soon. The 3-week silence from Earth was not hesitation or weakness. It was preparation time. Somewhere in space, systems that had been dormant for centuries were coming online. Technologies that existed in dimensions the Zalani couldn't perceive were being focused on their location. People who understood the true nature of humanity's place in the galaxy were making calculations and preparations. The Zalani had captured a research vessel and thought they had won a victory. They had no idea they had just painted a target on their entire civilization. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to rest. Soon she would witness something that no non-human had ever seen and lived to describe. She would watch her captors learn why the elder races had spent 3 centuries teaching one simple rule to every species in the galaxy. Don't tamper with Earth's fleet. They knew. They did it anyway. Now they would face the consequences. In his private chambers aboard the flagship, Admiral Kextal reviewed the intelligence reports from the captured human vessel one more time. Everything confirmed what she had suspected. Humans were a primitive species using fear and misdirection to protect themselves from stronger civilizations. Their ship was decades behind current Zalani technology. Their crew had no special training or unusual capabilities. Their weapons couldn't penetrate basic military shielding. There was simply nothing to fear. The elder races were fools, paralyzed by ancient superstitions and unwilling to test their assumptions. The Zalani Confederacy would show the galaxy what real power looked like. Kextal had already begun planning the next phase of expansion. Once humans were revealed as frauds, other species would lose confidence in the old order. The Confederacy could claim dozens of systems before anyone organized effective resistance. She was going to be remembered as the admiral who liberated the galaxy from the tyranny of fear. Her communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "Admiral, we're receiving some unusual reports from our border monitoring stations." "What kind of reports?" "Unexplained sensor readings near the edges of our territory. Brief contacts that don't match any known ship signatures. Our analysts think it might be equipment malfunctions." Kextal waved dismissively. "Probably cosmic radiation or stellar interference. The important thing is that no one has challenged our authority or demanded the return of the human prisoners. Earth has accepted defeat." "Yes, Admiral." After the officer left, Kextal returned to her strategic planning. She had no way of knowing that the sensor malfunctions were actually deep space reconnaissance probes, unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Devices that existed partially outside normal space-time, gathering detailed information about Zalani fleet positions, defensive capabilities, and command structures. The 3 weeks of silence were ending. The response was about to begin. Admiral Kextal strode into the interrogation chamber with confidence radiating from every step. 3 weeks of investigation had confirmed her suspicions. Humans were indeed a primitive species hiding behind empty threats and ancient superstitions. Today, she would break Captain Chen personally and extract the final proof she needed. "Captain Chen," she said, settling into the chair across from the human prisoner, "I thought you might like to know that your rescue is not coming." Sarah looked up calmly. Her face showed no sign of the stress or despair that Kextal had expected to see after 3 weeks of captivity. If anything, she seemed almost patient. I never expected a rescue, Sarah replied quietly. Really? No faith in your Earth command? No hope that your mighty fleet would come to save you? Kextall leaned forward with a predatory smile. Or perhaps you know, as I do, that your fleet is nothing but outdated ships and empty threats. Sarah studied the Admiral's face for a moment. What exactly do you think you've learned about humanity, Admiral? Everything. Kextall activated a holographic display that showed detailed schematics of the Perseverance. Your ship is a perfect example of human technology. Fusion reactors that are 50 years behind our current standards. Faster-than-light drives that can barely reach half the speed of our basic civilian transports. Weapons that couldn't penetrate the armor of our smallest escort vessels. She gestured to another display showing biological data. Your crew shows no signs of genetic enhancement or cybernetic augmentation. No special training that would indicate military capabilities beyond the norm. You are exactly what you appear to be. Researchers and support staff from a technologically backward civilization. And this surprises you? Kextall laughed. What surprises me is that the galaxy has been terrorized by bedtime stories for 3 centuries. The mighty humans who destroyed the Kralth hegemony turn out to be exactly as primitive as they appear. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Admiral, can I ask you something? During your investigation of my ship and crew, did you find anything that contradicted what we told you about our mission? Of course not. You were conducting exactly the research you claimed to be doing. And our ship's logs showed exactly the route we said we had taken to reach your territory. Yes, but... And our equipment was exactly what it appeared to be? Scientific? Instruments, basic life support, minimal defensive systems? Kextall frowned. She didn't like where this conversation was going. Your point? My point, Admiral, is that everything you discovered about us was true. We really are just researchers. Our ship really is just a basic science vessel. Our technology really is primitive compared to yours. Then you admit... I admit nothing, Sarah interrupted gently. I'm simply pointing out that you've learned exactly what we wanted you to learn. The Admiral felt a chill run down her spine. Something in the human's tone had changed. What do you mean? Sarah looked directly into Kextall's eyes. Admiral, do you really think that a species capable of making the Kralth hegemony disappear would send their best technology on a research mission? Do you think we would put our most advanced weapons on a ship full of civilian scientists? You're bluffing. Am I? Sarah seemed genuinely curious about the question. Tell me, Admiral, in 3 weeks of studying human technology, did you ever wonder why our ships look so different from everyone else's? Kextall hesitated. It was true that human vessels had a unique design philosophy. Where most galactic species built sleek, efficient ships optimized for speed and firepower, human ships looked almost primitive, bulky and overbuilt, with redundant systems and inefficient layouts. Your ships are poorly designed, she said finally. Are they? Or are they designed for something you don't understand? Sarah leaned forward slightly. Admiral, what do you think happens when you take technology that operates in 11 dimensions and try to force it into 3-dimensional space? That's impossible. Nothing can operate in 11 dimensions. Why not? The question hung in the air. Kextall realized she couldn't answer it. Her understanding of physics was based on what was considered possible by galactic science. But what if galactic science was wrong? You're trying to confuse me with pseudo-scientific nonsense, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Sarah smiled sadly. Admiral, 3 weeks ago, you captured a research vessel carrying scientists who were studying exotic matter that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Didn't you find it odd that we were able to detect and study something that your instruments couldn't even measure properly? Kextal's mouth went dry. It was true. Her science teams had tried to analyze the exotic matter that the humans had been studying, but their equipment couldn't get stable readings. The energy signatures kept shifting in ways that made no sense. That proves nothing, doesn't it? Sarah looked thoughtful. Let me tell you something about human ship design, Admiral. Those bulky, inefficient-looking hulls, they're not hiding better weapons or faster engines. They're hiding the fact that our ships exist partially outside normal space-time. That's ridiculous, is it? How do you think human merchant vessels have been appearing in locations they shouldn't be able to reach? How do you think we've been trading with species across the galaxy despite having slower-than-light drives by your standards? Kextal felt her confidence beginning to crack. The reports of impossible human ship movements had been bothering her science staff for weeks. No one could explain how human vessels could appear in distant locations with travel times that didn't match their known technology. Even if that were true, she said desperately, it doesn't explain the military implications. Where are your battle fleets? Where are your weapons of mass destruction? Sarah's expression grew even sadder. Admiral, you're asking the wrong questions. You want to know where our weapons are? They're everywhere. Every human ship, every human colony, every human outpost contains technology that could reshape star systems. We don't have weapons of mass destruction. We have weapons of reality alteration. I don't believe you. You don't have to believe me. Sarah looked out the small viewport in the interrogation chamber. But you might want to look outside. Kextal spun around to look through the viewport. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the normal view of space with distant stars, twinkling in the darkness. Then she noticed something wrong. The stars were moving, not drifting slowly as they should due to the ship's motion, but actively relocating themselves across the sky. Constellations were reshaping themselves in real time. The nebula that had been visible to port was now above them. The binary star system they were orbiting was somewhere else entirely. "What did you do?" Kextal whispered. "I didn't do anything," Sarah replied calmly. "I'm a research captain, remember? I study stellar phenomena and write scientific reports. But the message I sent 3 weeks ago? That wasn't a call for help. It was a location beacon." Kextal staggered to the communication panel and activated ship-wide sensors. What she saw made her blood freeze. Her entire fleet, 15 battlecruisers representing the most advanced military technology the Confederacy possessed, was floating in empty space. But they weren't in the same empty space they had been in moments before. "Navigation!" she screamed into the communicator. "Where are we?" The reply came back confused and terrified. "Admiral, we don't know. Our instruments show that we're in the same location as before, but the stars are all wrong. It's like the universe around us has been edited." Sarah stood up from her chair. "Admiral, would you like to know what really happened to the Kralth hegemony? Sit down. You're still our prisoner." "No," Sarah said gently. "I'm not. Look at your security systems." Kextal glanced at the door controls. The lock indicators were flashing amber. Not locked, not unlocked, but in some state that her technology couldn't properly define. When she tried to activate the locks manually, the controls simply wouldn't respond. "The Kralth made the same mistake you did," Sarah continued. They thought that capturing human ships and studying human technology would reveal our secrets. They spent months torturing our crews and dissecting our equipment. What happened to them? They were relocated. Sarah walked to the viewport and looked out at the impossible view of rearranged stars. Not destroyed, not killed, just moved. Their entire civilization was edited out of normal space and relocated to a pocket dimension where they could continue to exist without bothering anyone. That's impossible. Admiral, you've spent 3 weeks studying a ship that was designed by the children of humanity. Our youngest researchers using our most basic technology, operating equipment that represents the simplest possible applications of our scientific knowledge. Sarah turned back to face the trembling Admiral. Did you really think that a species capable of casual, faster-than-light travel would build their best ships to look like metal boxes? Did you think we would put our most advanced technology on vessels operated by civilian scientists? Where are we? Kextal asked weakly. You're in the same place you've always been, Sarah replied. It's just that place has been redefined. You're in a pocket of space-time that has been separated from the main universe. You still exist. Your ships still function. Your people are still alive. You just can't affect or threaten anyone else anymore. The Admiral sank into her chair. For how long? That depends on you. Sarah's voice was kind but firm. This pocket dimension is stable and self-sustaining. Your civilization can continue to exist here indefinitely. Your people can live normal lives, have families, pursue art and science and philosophy. The only thing you can't do is leave. Unless humanity decides that you've learned your lesson. The pocket dimension has observation ports, ways for us to monitor your society and see how you develop. If, in a few hundred years, you've grown beyond the need to threaten and conquer other species, the barriers can be removed. Kextal stared at the human in horror. You're keeping us as pets, as a zoo exhibit. We're keeping you as yourselves, Sarah corrected. But without the ability to hurt others. The Krauth are still in their pocket dimension, by the way. They've actually built quite a nice civilization. They've focused on art and philosophy instead of conquest. Some of our observers think they're happier now than they ever were when they were trying to dominate the galaxy. And if we refuse to accept this? If we fight back? Sarah looked genuinely sorry. Admiral, you're in a pocket dimension created by technology that operates in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Your weapons exist in 3 dimensions. Your ships exist in 3 dimensions. Your entire understanding of physics exists in 3 dimensions. What exactly do you think you could fight with? As if to prove her point, Kextal tried to activate her personal sidearm. The weapon simply faded away. Not destroyed, but edited out of existence in this particular pocket of reality. The choice is yours, Sarah continued. You can spend your time being angry about your situation, or you can use this opportunity to build something better. Your people are still alive. Your culture can still flourish. You just can't threaten anyone anymore. How do we know you're telling the truth? How do we know this isn't some elaborate bluff? Sarah walked to the door of the interrogation chamber. It opened at her approach, despite all the security systems that should have kept it locked. Because, Admiral, if this were a bluff, I would still be your prisoner. If this were a trick, your weapons would still work. If this were a deception, the stars outside wouldn't have moved. She paused in the doorway and looked back at the Admiral one final time. The galaxy has one rule about humanity, Admiral. One simple rule that has kept peace for 3 centuries. Don't tamper with Earth's fleet. The elder races learned this rule the hard way, and they've been teaching it to every new species they encounter. You knew. You did it anyway. And now you know why that rule exists. Sarah walked out of the interrogation chamber, leaving Admiral Kextall alone with the impossible view of relocated stars and the crushing realization that her entire understanding of the universe had been fundamentally wrong. Outside the chamber, she could hear the panicked voices of Zilani crew members trying to understand what had happened to their reality. Soon they would have to choose between anger and acceptance, between fighting the impossible and learning to build something better. Sarah hoped they would choose wisely. Humanity didn't enjoy isolating entire civilizations, but they had learned long ago that some lessons could only be taught through direct experience. The universe was far stranger and more dangerous than most species realized. But it was also more beautiful and full of potential than they could imagine. If the Zilani were willing to learn, they might someday discover that truth for themselves. 3 days after the Zilani Confederacy vanished from normal space, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, watching her crew conduct their scientific research as if nothing had happened. The exotic matter they had been studying was still there, still generating impossible energy readings, still existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Martinez looked up from his instruments with excitement. "Captain, the readings are even more interesting now. It's as if the dimensional barriers in this area have become more permeable. We're getting data that could revolutionize our understanding of multidimensional physics." Sarah nodded with a smile. "Take all the time you need, Doctor. We're not in any hurry." Through the view screen, she could see the faint shimmer that marked the boundary of the pocket dimension where the Zilani fleet now existed. To most observers, it would look like empty space with some unusual gravitational readings. Only someone who understood 11-dimensional physics would recognize it as a carefully constructed prison. Lieutenant Park approached from his communications station. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. Put it through to my ready room." Sarah walked to her private office and activated the secure communication system. The face that appeared on her screen belonged to Admiral Thompson, one of the few people in Earth Command who understood the full scope of humanity's capabilities. "Captain Chen, good to see you're safe. I trust your crew is unharmed." "Everyone's fine, Admiral. The Zilani treated us reasonably well, considering. They thought we were their prisoners." Admiral Thompson's weathered face showed a brief smile. "I imagine Admiral Kextall is having some difficulty adjusting to her new circumstances. She's beginning to understand the situation. Her science teams are frantically trying to figure out how to break through the dimensional barriers. But I don't think they'll make much progress." "They won't," Thompson confirmed. "The pocket dimension was constructed using our most advanced containment protocols. The Zilani could spend 1,000 years trying to escape and never even come close to success." Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee from the small dispenser in her ready room. "Admiral, I have to ask, was this always the plan? When you assigned me to study exotic matter in this particular system, did you know the Zilani would try to interfere?" Thompson's expression grew more serious. "We suspected they might. Our probability analysts had been tracking Confederacy expansion patterns for months. They were the most likely candidate to test the old rule. Your research mission gave us a perfect opportunity to monitor their intentions. So my crew and I were bait." "You were scientists conducting legitimate research in neutral space," Thompson replied carefully. "The fact that your mission also served as a test of Zilani respect for galactic law was a secondary consideration." Sarah understood the diplomatic language. Earth Command had indeed used her crew as bait, but they had also ensured that the Perseverance was in the perfect position to study phenomena that could advance human understanding of multidimensional physics. It was typical of humanity's approach to galactic politics, accomplish multiple objectives simultaneously while appearing to do something completely innocent. What happens now, Admiral? The galaxy is going to notice that an entire confederacy has disappeared. No, they won't. Thompson activated a data display that showed current galactic communication networks. As far as the rest of the galaxy is concerned, the Zalani Confederacy still exists. Their automated communication systems are still responding to routine inquiries. Their border monitoring stations are still reporting normal status. Their diplomatic representatives are still attending council meetings. Sarah frowned. But they're all in the pocket dimension. How is that possible? Multidimensional communication arrays, Thompson explained. We've established quantum entanglement links between the pocket dimension and normal space. The Zalani can continue to participate in galactic society, but only through carefully controlled communication channels. They can talk, but they can't act. And they don't know this? Admiral Quetzalcoatl suspects, but most of her people think they're still in normal space. From their perspective, the universe around them looks exactly the same as it always did. Only their navigation equipment shows anomalous readings, and their science teams are explaining that as equipment malfunctions caused by the exotic matter in this system. Sarah had to admire the elegance of the solution. The Zalani could maintain their dignity and their sense of identity while being completely unable to threaten anyone. It was imprisonment disguised as freedom. How long will you keep them there? That depends entirely on them, Thompson replied. We have observers monitoring their society through dimensional portals. If they show genuine growth beyond their conquering impulses, we can gradually expand their pocket dimension until it reconnects with normal space. The Krauth, for example, have made remarkable progress in the last 3 centuries. The Krauth are still alive? Very much so. They've built a peaceful, artistic civilization focused on philosophy and creative expression. Some of our cultural exchange specialists think they're actually happier than they were when they were trying to dominate the galaxy. We're considering offering them a choice: return to normal space, or remain in their pocket dimension with expanded territory and resources. Sarah walked to the small viewport in her ready room and looked out at the stars. From this angle, she couldn't see the dimensional shimmer, but she knew it was there. An entire civilization existed just a few dimensional layers away, learning a lesson that would either make them better beings or drive them to futile rage. Admiral, can I ask you something that's been bothering me? Why do we hide our capabilities? Why not just demonstrate our technology openly and prevent conflicts like this before they start? Thompson was quiet for a long moment. Captain, what do you think would happen if the galaxy learned that humans could casually edit reality? That we could relocate entire star systems, rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas, or make entire species disappear with a thought? Sarah considered the question. Fear, chaos. Every species would either try to destroy us or worship us as gods. Exactly. The current system works because most species believe we're just another civilization with slightly unusual technology. The elder races know enough to respect us, but they don't know enough to panic. The younger species see us as primitive and peaceful, which encourages them to reveal their true intentions before we have to take action. It's a form of psychological warfare. It's a form of psychological peacekeeping, Thompson corrected. We've learned that the best way to prevent galactic wars is to let aggressive species defeat themselves. The Zilani thought they were conquering a weak target, but they were actually volunteering for a lesson in humility. Sarah understood, but it still felt manipulative. What about species that don't test us? What about civilizations that genuinely want peace? We help them flourish. Human technology has been quietly shared with dozens of peaceful species over the centuries. We just do it in ways that make it look like they developed the advances themselves. The gravitational manipulation, technology that the Vorthans are so proud of, that was based on theoretical papers published by human scientists 50 years ago. The quantum computing breakthroughs that revolutionized Makari society, those came from research data we left where their scientists would find it. And they don't know? They don't need to know. They get the benefits of advanced technology while maintaining their pride and independence. Everyone wins. Sarah began to understand the true scope of humanity's influence on galactic civilization. They weren't conquerors or rulers. They were gardeners, carefully cultivating the growth of other species while pruning away the aggressive elements that threatened the peace. Admiral, one more question. The exotic matter we've been studying here, is it natural, or did humanity place it here? Thompson's smile returned. What do you think, Captain? Sarah looked at the data streaming across her ready room displays. Energy signatures that defied known physics, matter that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Readings that suggested the fundamental structure of space-time was more flexible than anyone had imagined. I think, she said slowly, that humanity has been preparing the galaxy for something. This exotic matter isn't just a scientific curiosity, it's a tool, a way to make the impossible seem routine, so that when other species encounter our real capabilities, they have a framework for understanding what they're seeing. Very good, Captain. You're beginning to think like a long-term strategic planner. So what's the end game? Where is humanity leading the galaxy? Thompson's expression grew distant, as if he were looking into a future that only he could see. Captain, did you know that our deep space sensors have detected signs of intelligent life in other galaxies? Civilizations that make our current understanding of technology look primitive? The local galaxy group, Andromeda, the Magellanic Clouds, dozens of smaller galaxies. They're all heading toward us at significant fractions of light speed. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Invasion? Unknown. But contact is inevitable within the next few thousand years. When that happens, the galaxy will need to be united and ready, not through conquest or domination, but through genuine cooperation and understanding. And humanity is preparing for that day. Humanity has been preparing for that day since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Every conflict we prevent, every species we guide toward peace, every civilization we help advance. It's all part of a long-term plan to ensure that our galaxy is ready for whatever comes next. Sarah stared out at the stars with new understanding. The Zilani Confederacy, floating in their pocket dimension, learning to build something better than conquest. The Krauth, pursuing art and philosophy in their protected space. The countless species across the galaxy, growing and advancing with subtle human guidance, preparing for a future they didn't even know was coming. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's necessary, Thompson replied, and it's why we have that one rule about not tampering with Earth's fleet. Every species needs to learn it for themselves, in their own way, at their own pace. The Zilani knew the rule. They chose to test it anyway. Now they'll spend the next few centuries learning why it exists. The communication ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. Outside her viewport, The stars continued their ancient dance, but now she understood that humanity was quietly choreographing the entire performance. Her door chimed, and Dr. Martinez entered with another data pad full of exciting readings. "Captain, you won't believe what we're discovering about the exotic matter. It's almost like it's responding to our research, revealing deeper secrets the more we study it." Sarah smiled and turned back to her duties as a research captain. "Show me everything, Doctor. We have all the time in the world." As the Perseverance continued its scientific mission, a few dimensional layers away, Admiral Kextall stood on her bridge trying to comprehend the magnitude of her civilization's mistake. Her science teams had confirmed what Captain Chen had told. They were indeed in a pocket dimension, separated from the main universe by barriers they couldn't even properly detect, much less break. But the most disturbing discovery had come from their deep space observations. Using their most powerful telescopes, they had found evidence of other pocket dimensions scattered throughout local space. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Each one containing a civilization that had made the same mistake the Zalani had made. Each one learning the same lesson about humanity's true place in the galaxy. Admiral Kextall now understood why the elder races had tried to warn them. Why Ambassador Zeth Carr had spoken with such fear about the consequences of testing humanity's patience. The rule wasn't based on superstition or ancient fears. It was based on experience. But understanding the truth also brought a strange sense of peace. Her people were alive. Their culture would survive. And perhaps if they learned to be better than they had been, they might someday earn their way back to the stars. In the depths of space, the galaxy continued its eternal dance, watched over by gardeners who wore the mask of primitives and shepherded 1,000 civilizations toward a future that only they could see. The rule remained simple. Don't tamper with Earth's fleet. They knew. They did it anyway. And now they understood why. The consequences were not punishment, but education. The universe was vast and strange and beautiful. Humanity had accepted the responsibility of protecting that beauty, one lesson at a time, until all the children of the galaxy were ready to face whatever awaited them in the darkness between the stars. The cosmic garden grew, tended by invisible hands, preparing for a harvest that lay centuries in the future. And in pocket dimensions scattered across space and time, former conquerors learned to plant flowers instead of flags, creating art instead of empires, building tomorrow instead of destroying today. It was the most human solution possible, turning enemies into students, conflicts into opportunities, and the vast loneliness of space into a classroom where everyone could learn to be better than they were. The stars watched and waited and approved.